All right, so we have a new feature in Pharmacy Simulator that lets you create draft scenarios automatically with generative AI. Or you can just use generative AI to support your own normal scenario authoring processes. This is a draft feature, so it needs feedback, it needs input, so that it can get better. Now, if I go to edit scenario here, we've got the create new scenario button, same as it always was. Here we can do test generation OTC 01. We can go to make a basic OTC scenario. Now it's an English scenario set in Australia, and we've got the same environments we've always had: pharmacy, clinic, hospital. When we're in the pharmacy environment, we have these templates, and these templates are basically pre-contrived structures for how the scenario should flow. For instance, we've got this OTC request, which is going to have quite a few baked in sort of turns in them around standard OTC counseling. Similarly, when we have the prescriber call, someone's come with a prescription, and then you need to identify a problem with it, call the prescriber to get clarification or change or whatever it is. We have a couple of others there, but if we also look at the hospital, we've got the same sort of thing. We've got these templates that are pre-configured to behave in certain ways. For instance, this handover leading to an urgent medication review, that's a scenario where you appear nearby the nurse's station and the nurse sort of tries to give you a handover at the end of the shift, which prompts a medication review because the nurse has mentioned something that's happened during the night that's, requires your attention. Similarly, this debrief here in the office, that is set up so that you, a nurse, and a doctor are in the ward office, and you have a back and forth conversation around what needs to happen in a particular scenario. These templates are all sort of subject to change. They're just configuration. And what I really need feedback on primarily is actually the structure of those templates. What typical sort of scenarios you as an educator would like to see. If we do this basic OTC request one here, I've got this checkbox here, draft with scenario with AI, and we've got this box here. What's the scenario about? Now, this is the initial brief that you give to the generative AI, and this can be as short or as long as you want it to be. Obviously, if it's too long, eventually you'll hit context window problems, but you can go pretty long. Similarly, if you go short, it will fill in a lot of the details for you. The generative AI will sort of take that as artistic license to try and come up with something that seems plausible. So if we put in a short brief, let's, middle-aged man presents with persistent dry cough due to reflux. He is not aware that it is a reflux-related issue. He wants cough suppressant. Symptoms worsen at night when laying down and after meals. Not much detail there. But if we then hit create scenario, it's going to plan the scenario out and give us an initial template. So we then review that. And this is where we have quite a lot of academic control. In this case, it's generated this case as being persistent dry cough caused by reflux, worse after meals, colon requested cough suppressant. This is the description here that the students will see on the load scenario page. So it's meant to just be a brief description that doesn't give away the scenario. The learning objectives here, it's come up with reasonable looking learning objectives. You know, they're not perfect, but they're sort of okay. And again, they don't give away the case, because students will see those learning objectives when they first open the scenario for the first time. This field here lets us pre-configure the scenario so that the patient or the nurse or whoever it is talks to you before you do anything. So they proactively will initiate a conversation. In this case, we're not going to do that. The patient will just present at the counter for you to talk to. Now, we can indicate here what you should supply. This is another area that I need feedback on. I'm sort of inclined to change this to being just an ATC class of medications rather than a specific drug. Let's give him some Nexium. If the product you wanted is not there, you can add a new one into the product database. So 20 milligrams of Nexium is what we're going to try and give this guy. And so this is the character, the player roles there, community pharmacist. The character here is Colin Turner. It's generated that name. They've given in the middle-aged man avatar, but we can select different ones if we want to. And it's written a persona for him. So he's a 56-year-old self-employed kitchen installer, dry cough, wants cough suppressant, disturbing his sleep, worse after eating when he lies down. You know, standard sort of reflux. Then we get this series of decision points, and this is the flow of the conversation. For each of these decision points, which you could also consider as like a turn, it will generate 3 versions of essentially the same piece of conversation. One which is optimal, one which is okay, and one which is not so good. So the very first turn is introduce yourself as the pharmacist to someone you've not met before. So this will generate 3 dialogue options that are going to look like, hi, I'm the pharmacist on duty, how can I help you? Or, hi, what's up? Or, you know, hi, hurry up, I'm busy. Something like that. And it will vary because it's generative AI and it does things differently as you go. And that's given the group name of greeting. And we also have these additional checkboxes and all these buttons so we can reorder things. And we can create particular things. So in this case, it said this one here, turn 2, find out what's brought them in today, can be done at the same time as the above. I don't want that. So I want you to have to introduce yourself before you can find out why they're in. But finding out what's brought them in and what medical conditions they have, yeah, we could do that at the same time. That's okay. Find out what medicines they're already taking. Again, that being at the same time is okay. The nice thing about having same time as the above ticked is that it will unlock all those dialogue options at the same time. So the student gets hit with a wide range of choices. So for a more beginner scenario, maybe you don't want that. Maybe you want a really structured, rigid flow of conversation. But for these scenarios, maybe you want to have the student make more decisions. But also, as soon as you tick this same time as above, it'll actually generate these sets of dialogue options in the same at the same time concurrently. So it'll be a bit faster. Similarly, we've got these distractor only and mood responses buttons. So if we tick this here, then it will generate different responses to the dialogue option based on how the character's mood is. So if you've done things to make them angry, they will respond differently if you've ticked this box. So generally speaking, you're not going to need that too often, but it depends on the type of scenario. But I'm just going to throw in a couple here as you get later in the conversation, because then you've had more opportunities to potentially annoy the patient or make them happy. And so having custom responses to that makes some sense towards the end of the conversation. So I'll just tick those and recommend treatment, explain how to treat, use the treatment recommended, lifestyle advice. Again, this is a template, so a lot of these, so these first few turns here, these are all pre-configured as part of that OTC, basic OTC template. And then it just sort of fills in the middle section here generatively. It decides what those turns should look like. And then again, the end, explain how to use the treatment, give lifestyle advice, check the patient's understood what to do. They are all sort of pre-configured in this particular template. Some templates have more pre-configured steps and some have less. It depends on the nature of the template. And again, we'll tick there. We've also got this distractor only option. So that lets you insert decision points that are not intended to be clicked at all. So you can put in pure distractors that you just expect them to not click on. All right, so I've done all that. And again, we could shuffle these around if we don't like the ordering. We can insert additional turns if we want to. We can delete them. We can change the language in here, you know, requiring escalation. And this will all have an impact on the resultant scenario that gets generated. A good one here, check the patient knows what to do. Check the patient understands what you've told them. We can just tweak things. It gives us some warnings down here, timing and triggers of the cough. It's sort of saying, hey, try to keep each turn about one thing. If you lump a whole bunch of conversation points into one turn, you end up with a really long, convoluted dialogue option, and that's to be avoided. I think in this case it's sort of okay though. Now when I click write scenario, it's going to go off and start trying to generate all these turns, all these sets of dialogue options. And this will take a minute or two. We've got an AI allowance here. There's a daily AI allowance that is sort of given to us just as a licensed user. And then there's additional AI credits that can be added to our account, which are quite generous. So we can see the AI allowance here, the free daily allowance going down as the scenario gets generated. But if you have purchased credits, you will have a hard time denting them unless you turn up the AI model to higher level models. The default model that I've got selected here is very cost efficient, and you could generate dozens of scenarios for $1. It's about 2 or 3 cents per scenario, really. All right, so it's almost done here. Okay, so now the scenario's loaded. We're in the edit mode, so we've got a few extra buttons on the screen, but we can just check. We can have a look at it and see how it's gone. Again, I'm seeing the scores I would get for each of these options here because I'm an administrator. Most of you won't see that, but it's generated these 3 options here that are all an introduction, and the patient will tell us why they're here. So we can see the good option, hello, I'm the pharmacist, how can I help you? We've got the sort of casual option here, g'day, pharmacist speaking, what do you want? And then we've got this presumptive one here, I'm the pharmacist, you're here for some medicine, aren't you? So obviously this is the best one, pretty straightforward in this case. For now, we don't have any audio on the character. I'll show you how to generate that momentarily. But having clicked that, he said, yep, I'm after something for a cough, and that unlocks a bunch of options. And we can see, okay, I understand you want something, you know, And there's a few little things here. I understand you want something for tonight. So it's sort of inferred that he has problems at night because the model knows that it's worse for him at night. He hasn't actually told us that he wants it for tonight, but so there's these little quibbles here, and we might want to go in and edit that. So we can just click on that little pencil icon here, and then we can just edit it. Let's just get rid of that. And similarly for the distractor, we'll get rid of the word tonight. And while I'm in here, I'll just check the response to it. Yep, that seems okay. So we sort of fine-tuned it a little bit, but we didn't have to change too much. So let's just sort of click through. Okay, we've got options here. Is it just the cough? Is there anything else? What's brought you in today? What's troubling you the most? Mainly coughing at night. And you can see it's broken his response up into multiple lines, and it does that intelligently too, to break it down into discrete little chunks. And what did he tell us there? Coughing at night, and so it gets irritated. What, with something serious. Don't want to waste the doctor's time. Fair enough. Okay. You know, to help me judge what's appropriate. What medical conditions do you have? So again, we've got sort of three options here around his medical history. And this is clearly the best one. But the student has to read those and actually think, what makes that dialogue option better than the other options that are in front of me? Which one is the best? And in doing that, they learn, okay, you know, person-centered language and open questions, and they learn that these things are better. All right, so let's sort of skip through things now in the interest of time. We can see, okay, we're going to take some history, and we're going to talk about his medicines. What medicines do you take? He's got blood pressure. He doesn't know what they are. He doesn't take any OTC vitamins or anything like that. And let's use one of these less good options. Disturbing sleep. I'll look for a cough suppressant. Well, I don't really want to give him a cough suppressant. Is it worse after meals? Does it happen at other times as well? Mostly after I eat. Okay, so it sounds like reflux when he lies down. Alright, so we can use jargon here. Any serious red flags? Dyspnea, hemoptysis, syncope, pyrexia. So that's obviously a suboptimal option. Like, these are things we want to know, but we're not going to use jargon like that. But sure, let's do it. And he'll say, I don't know what that means. Yes. No, I'm not short of breath. Okay. So we can recommend, a cough suppressant, or we can give him some Nexium. I'm going to give him some Nexium. Okay, and I'm going to then give him advice on how to use it. I could just tell him how to use it on the packet, or I could say take one Nexium 20 milligram tablet a day. Sure. Now we can give him some lifestyle advice, you know, smaller meals, avoid eating close to bedtime, stay upright after meals, cut out the foods you think are causing it, and sleep sitting up. Sure, let's do that. I can't sleep sitting up. Yeah, fair enough. And then we'll do the sort of talk back, teach back method. Okay, make sure I explain it clear. Can you tell me in your own words what you understand about why you're taking the Nexium and how you use it? Again, we have suboptimal options as well. Okay, cool. And you can see that he's pretty happy. His mood's pretty good because I've been mostly selecting the correct options. And so he's sort of smiling, happy. I should also flag that when we use these options, he will animate himself. So he sort of had a slight head nod there. And if we click this one, yep, that's a clear head nod. If you click this one, he's a little bit surprised at first, but he's pretty happy. And that was all again generated by the AI. It decided what facial expressions and what animations to apply to each dialogue option, which saves you a lot of time, because otherwise you'd have to go in here and you'd have to manually select it from the list, choose which facial expression it should be, etc. Now, I haven't actually given him his product. Again, we were going to give him Nexium, 1 tablet daily. We'll send the robot off to get it. We then click it, give to Colin. Great. Thanks for coming in. See you later. Great. And then we get the feedback. Again, all the feedback here. We've got feedback for every single turn we made, every decision we made, and it gives us feedback. So, that was a warm professional introduction. This was all generated by the AI. Open, respectful question. Checks prescribed, non-prescribed medicines. Good. Here's a option I selected that wasn't optimal. You said it was worse at night, also worth after meals, or does it happen at other times as well? Yeah, it's the right question to ask, but the used closed either or wording, so Colin wasn't going to volunteer any additional details. The red flags question, you screen several important warning symptoms, but unexplained clinical jargon may make it harder for Colin to answer accurately. So this is all pretty good feedback. I'm happy with this feedback. And we also got some marks for giving him an appropriate treatment. But again, in this case, really any of the sort of PPIs would be acceptable. So maybe I need to adjust that. So in fact, I'll show you how to do that. If I open up the editor menu, select the patient, edit product provision. If I gave him Robitussin, I would have got -1, apparently. But this Nexium one here, we could change this to just any proton pump inhibitor, and that would be considered the correct treatment. So the last thing you want to do is set up the voice. Here we have a voice picker. We can say male, okay.
Hello there.
Hello there.
Hello there.
Hello there.
Hello there.
Seems okay. Let's try that one. And then we scroll down here to generate dialogue audio. Click that, and it will synthesize audio for all the patient's possible lines. Again, just takes a minute, or not even, less than a minute. And as soon as that's done, I'll hit save and preview so that we can see what they sound like, see if we're happy with them. Now, when I click,
Hi, I'm after something for a cough.
we can see that his lip synchronization is working, and we can hear him.
It's mainly the coughing at night.
Great.
Yes, high blood pressure. That's about it, I think.
Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this now. It's a reasonable little thing. So what we can do, I'll go back into simple control scheme because that makes it easier, is I can then click on, well, if I go into the edit scenario menu here, I can upload and share, and that just uploads to the cloud. And after I've done that, I can also submit for review, and that will submit it to get reviewed. Basic reflux scenario. We can submit that for review. In fact, should I rename it first? No, I'll just submit it. This will submit it for review, and then it will go through an automated review process where it will check it for profanity, it will check it for correctness, just to make sure it's got all the audio, make sure it's got the right structure, make sure there's no bugs, make sure the scenario can be ended, and then it will also do a check for clinical correctness, again with an LLM. So the generative AI will just examine the best pathway where you've selected all the correct options, and it will sort of judge whether that actually makes sense and is clinically appropriate, and if there's any sort of red flags there. That'll take a few minutes. That happens in the background. You don't have to sit here waiting for it, but if we did sit here waiting for it, the feedback would come into this box here, and it might say, oh, you need to fix something, or it might say, all good, I'm happy with it, or it might say, we've referred it for a human review, which is what it will do if there's any doubt. That's the sort of crux of it. And just because I'm still seeking feedback here, It's worth noting in the hospital scenarios, we've got ones where you need to talk to multiple people. So the nurse, the patient, the nurse, the doctor. And it will also generate a full patient chart. I didn't actually show you that here, but it also generates dispensing history. It hasn't generated any for him because he's simple OTC request. But for most of the prescription scenarios, it would generate a dispensing history that sort of makes sense for the patient. And in the hospital scenarios, it will generate a full patient chart, including reason for admission, charted medications, observations over time. So, temperature, oxygen levels, all those things. Pathology results. It will give you a pretty comprehensive history that is usually pretty usable straight away. So that's all I want to show you for now. If you have any questions, let me know. But I'd really love to hear from you, sort of whether these templates are working for you or whether it's consistently making sort of the same mistakes all the time, or if it's just not working the way you want it to, or whatever it may be. Just let me know and we can work on it. Thanks for watching.